Blend If is a powerful tool in Photoshop. Did you know you can use it to improve your photos? In this video, I will show you some of the best ways to use Blend If. We're going to take a close look at what Blend If really does here in Photoshop. Let's use Blend If to add more glow to this sunrise. So we're going to add a brightness and contrast adjustment layer, and no need to make any adjustments. We're just going to change the blend mode to soft light. And you can see if I change it to overlay, it's a little bit stronger. There's soft light, there's hard light. So we're changing the glow of this sunrise. Let's leave it at soft light. You can change the opacity later if you think this effect is too strong. So now we have this glow in the highlights, but over here you can see that we've lost some of the detail in the shadows. So we're going to get that back with Blend If. Throughout all the examples, I'm actually going to show you how to work with Blend If and explain things as we go along. Double click on the right side of the layer, and here are your layer styles, and down here we have Blend If. For Blend If, we have this layer and underline layer. Most of the time you're going to be using underline layer. So we're going to refer to what Blend If does by saying the word protect for the underline layer. So we have the brightness contrast layer here, which is our effect. And what we want to do is protect the shadows from this brightness contrast layer. The way we do that is we bring the slider on the left over, and you can see how that is affecting the shadow areas. It's coming back. So we are protecting the shadow area from the brightness contrast. And then if you hold Alt or Option, this adjustment right here will split, and that will allow you to feather out that adjustment so that it's not so harsh. So I'm going to say OK. Now when you use Blend If, it creates a mask, and sometimes it's subtle and hard to see. So here's a pretty good trick that I learned. I'm going to go back into my layer style, and I'm going to click on something called Color Overlay. You can use any color here, but you can see now, just by turning that on, areas that the color is coming through are the highlights, are lighter areas. And the areas that are darker are the areas that are actually protected by using our Blend If. So I'm going to say OK. Notice here now that we have an effect. So I'm going to click on this arrow right here on the right, and this is going to help us see all the effects of Blend If and what area we're seeing it in our image. So when I turn this off and turn it back on, when we adjusted our Blend If, these darker areas where you don't see the color is what is protected. We've protected those areas from the brightness contrast. If I double click again, you can see how that changes. So again, moving over my slider, I'm protecting the shadows from the left slider over here. And as I move towards midtones, you can see that more and more is protected. I'm going to split this just a little bit. So we're going to keep on using this color overlay to show where the effect of Blend If is on our image. We just click on effects to turn that off, and we have our shadow detail back. In this example, I'm going to show you how to use Blend If to modify the highlights and shadows for noise reduction and sharpness. So typically, noise is in the shadow areas. You can see this image has a lot of noise up here, and so we're going to use the noise reduction filter to reduce some of this noise. I'm going to duplicate this layer, Command J, and when you are working with filters, it's a good idea to change the layer to a smart object. So there's a smart object, and I'm going to come up here to Filter, Noise, Reduce Noise. I'm going to put these settings strong. In fact, I'm going to have the strength 10 because Blend If is going to take care of everything. I'm going to keep the preserve details at 10, reduce color noise at 90, and sharpen details to about 240. And you can see it's reducing noise in the shadows, but it is affecting the whole image, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to say OK. I'm going to name this layer Reduce Noise. I'm going to double click on my layer to bring up my layer style. So now, as before, what we want to do is we want to protect our highlight areas from the reduced noise layer. In other words, we don't want the reduced noise in our lighter areas. We just want the reduced noise to be in the shadow area. We're going to take the slider on the right and bring it over, hold Alt or Option, and split our slider and say OK. If I drop this arrow over here, you can see that I have a smart filter, and my reduced noise is the effect. So if I turn that off, you can see that up there in the shadows, we are reducing some of that noise. And for our overall image, if we want to see where our Blend If is taking effect, just click on the color overlay and you can see all the areas where BlendIF is actually taking effect, the colored areas. And you can fine tune this. You can bring your slider over more to protect more of the midtones. And as I'm bringing the slider over, you can see that it is getting a lot of the highlights and midtone areas. It is protecting them from the effects of the reduced noise. So that's one good way to really see what's going on in your image. Use this color overlay trick. Say OK. So the colored areas are where we are actually doing the noise reduction. And you can just click over here where it says color overlay and you can turn that off. So now we want to sharpen this image, but we don't want to sharpen the whole image, just more in the highlights and the midtones, not in the shadows. So I'm going to duplicate this background layer again. I'm going to call it sharpen. I want this layer all the way to the top, create a smart object from it. And I'm going to use another sharpen filter. Filter, sharpen, smart sharpen. I'm going to set the amount to about 200%, radius 1, reduce noise 10, and I'm going to say OK. It's a lot of sharpening and it's happening in the whole image. Now I'm going to double click on my sharpen layer. We're going to come down here to underline layer, and now we want to protect the shadows from the sharpen filter that we just added, and we only want the sharpening to happen in the midtones and the highlights. So I'm going to bring this slider over, hold Alt or Option and split this slider, something like this. I'm going to turn on my color overlay because I want to see where my actual sharpening is. So I can see the color is not up here at the top. So I am not sharpening in the shadows. You see all these other color areas, or the lighter areas, are midtones and highlights. That's where it's doing the sharpening. Turn that off and say OK. And click on this arrow. This is a smart object, so I can go back into my smart filter for smart sharpen. I can change my sharpening. I can go back into BlendIF and change my slider if I need to protect more areas. I can turn on my color overlay effect so I can see where my sharpening is. And of course I can use my opacity if I think there's too much sharpening overall. So we've used BlendIF to target noise reduction and sharpening. Do me a favor, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. I appreciate it. So let's use BlendIF to replace the sky. There is a sky replacement tool in Photoshop, but BlendIF can do a pretty good job at it, and you might like it. Give it a try. So this is the image here that I want the sky replacement, and up here is the image that has my sky. I'm going to double click on my layer to bring up my layer style. We've been working with BlendIF Gray. We're going to work with one of the other channels. We're going to work with the blue channel. So we're going to work with the underline layer, and we're going to move this black slider to the right to only fill in the blue area of the image, applying the sky. So here goes my slider from the left here. And you see that my underline layer is coming in here. I'm going to split the slider, and you see it did a pretty good job. Turn on my color overlay. There is where my BlendIF is taking effect. I say OK, and I can turn my color overlay effect off. But see, that was a quick and simple way to do a sky replacement. Here's the before and here's the after of my sky replacement. Now let's use BlendIF to improve a vignette. There's lots of ways to make a vignette. You can make your own, but in this case we're going to use a filter. I'm going to make a duplicate of the background layer, make a smart object out of it, and come up here to filter, camera raw filter. Now camera raw has a vignette here. I'm just going to use this tool, slide it to the left to get a darker vignette. I'm going to make it pretty strong. I'm not going to feather it too much right now. We're going to let BlendIF do the rest. I'm going to say OK, turn that off, turn that back on. Thing is up here, you see that the vignette is actually in the highlights. We're going to let BlendIF take care of that. So I'm going to double click on my layer to bring up my layer style, and we're going to use underline layer. And now I want to protect my highlights from the vignette that we just added from the camera raw filter. So I'm going to take my highlight slider, slide it over. I'm going to split the control to even it out, and I'm going to say OK. I'm going to change my blend mode and see which one I like between soft light, overlay, hard light, kind of like the punch overlay gives. I can drop the opacity if I want. There's the before and there's the after. You can see our highlights are protected from the vignette. If I double click, turn on my color overlay again, you see the highlighted areas are protected. So again, that's a good way to see the effect of BlendIF on your image. I can turn that off. There's the before and there's the after. In this example, we might want to add a color grade to this image. And one way to do that, we can add a solid color adjustment layer. We can choose any color we want. I'm going to choose a bluish color. Now on our color fill layer, We're going to change our blend mode to soft light. Now the blue is on the entire image. We don't want that blue on her skin. So now if we double click to get our layer style and come down here to underline layer, what we want to do now is protect the highlights and only have that blue in the shadows on the underline layer. So we're going to take the slider from the right, and you can see how all the blue is coming off her skin. Take that over around the midtones, hold Alt or Option, and split the slider. Now again, if we click on the color overlay, you can see where Blend If is protecting the skin area, and the effect is on the rest of the image. I'm going to say OK, turn off my color overlay, and we've added a color grade with Blend If smoothing out the effect. We can use Blend If to cut out these flames. I'm going to double click on my flames layer. So far for Blend If, we've been using the underline layer. Now we're going to use this layer. For the underline layer, we were using the word protect. For this layer, we're going to use the word remove. So I want to remove all these dark areas. So I'll come up to the dark slider and slide that over, and you can see already it's revealing just the flames. Again, I can split this slider, get it looking a little bit more even, something like this, and say OK. And of course I could move this down here and make it smaller and position it in here, and we have our flames in our fireplace. But what if we wanted a mask? So I'm going to make a copy of the flame layer. I'm going to add a new blank layer above my flames layer, and I'm going to merge these two top layers together. Hold Shift and select both layers, right click and say merge layers. So I'm going to command click on that merged layer. I'm going to come down here to the flames layer that I had originally changed my Blend If, change my sliders over, and hit add layer mask. I can throw away my merged layer. If I click Alt or Option on my flames layer mask, here is my mask for my flames. Here's another example with this layer in Blend If. I'm going to bring over this image, and we're going to use Blend If again. We're going to use this layer. We're going to remove the light areas. We're going to bring the white slider over to the left. Almost instantly, that white background almost disappeared. I'm going to split this slider and say OK. I want to move this down. So that removed that white background from those leaves right away. Now if we want to see how all these other plants might look in this planner, we can do something like this. We can create a group, Command G. I'm going to double click on my layer style, and I'm going to remove my adjustment from before, and this time I'm going to make that same adjustment on the group itself. So I'll double click. So I'm going to put that layer style for this layer on the group and slide the slider. I'm going to remove the light areas, split my slider, and say OK. Now if I want to try out any of these other plants, I'll place this plant layer there, turn off this other one, and now I brought in another plant, and I can see how that looks. But since my Blend If is on the group, that same setting for Blend If will work on any image that I put in here that I want to remove the white area from. So if I want to see how this next plant looks in the planner, all I need to do is place that layer in the group, and it's already cut out. The white area is removed. I can see what plant looks better in the planner, and I've used the group to hold my Blend If effect for anything that I put in that group. For more Photoshop tutorials, click on one of the videos on the screen now. Please like, share, and subscribe. Remember, it's never too late to learn. Thanks for watching.